We will now commence our analysis of a fundamental concept in civil law, negligence. This explainer will deconstruct the essential legal components, duty, breach, and damage, which collectively determine liability in the law of torts.
We shall begin with Section 1. Here, we will establish a precise legal definition for negligence and examine the primary scholarly theories that have shaped its interpretation in jurisprudence.
At its core, negligence is failing to be careful enough, which leads to someone else getting hurt. The formal definition is the breach of a legal duty to take care. It is not just a careless thought, it is careless action or inaction. This is not just a civil concept. The Indian Penal Code 1860, Section 304A, addresses criminal negligence, such as causing death by a rash act. For our purposes in tort law, we focus on the three-part chain. A duty existed, that duty was broken, and damage was the result.
Two rival theories exist regarding the nature of negligence. The subjective theory attempts to ascertain the defendant's state of mind. Was it one of culpable carelessness? This view is supported by scholars such as Salmond and Austin. In contrast, the objective theory focuses not on thought but on conduct. The court asks, what would a reasonable, ordinary person have done in this situation? This theory, supported by Pollack and Alderson, is the one primarily used in tort law. The legal maxim, imperitia culpa ad numerator, summarizes this principle. Lack of skill is considered a form of fault.
Proceeding to Section 2. We will now detail the essential elements of negligence. To succeed, a plaintiff must satisfy a critical three-part framework for any claim to be legally viable.
The essentials of negligence can be visualized as a chain of causation. First, a duty of care. Did the defendant owe a legal duty to the plaintiff? Second, a breach of duty. Did the defendant's conduct fall below the standard of a reasonable person? And third, damage. Did the plaintiff suffer actual harm as a direct result of that breach? If any one of these three links is absent, the claim fails. All three must be proven for the action to succeed.
We now turn to Section 3, which examines the landmark legal principles and rules of proof that underpin the modern law of negligence. We will analyze the foundational case law that has defined the concepts of duty and evidence.
In a landmark case of Donoghue v. Stevenson, citation 1932 Appeal Cases, page 562, Lord Atkin articulated the Neighbour Principle. The quote reads, "You must take reasonable care to avoid acts or omissions which you can reasonably foresee would be likely to injure your neighbor." This principle became the bedrock of the modern concept of duty of care.
Let us analyze Donoghue versus Stevenson. The core legal question was whether a manufacturer owes a duty of care to the ultimate consumer, absent any contractual relationship. The court answered in the affirmative. The facts involved a decomposed snail in an opaque bottle of ginger beer. The groundbreaking conclusion was that a manufacturer is indeed responsible for product safety for the final consumer. The principle established a broad definition of neighbor as anyone who could be reasonably foreseen as being affected by one's actions.
To apply this principle, consider a scenario where a consumer discovers a decomposed lizard in a sealed beverage resulting in illness. Who is liable? Following the precedent in Donoghue v. Stevenson, the manufacturer is liable. The rationale is that the manufacturer has a duty to ensure product safety for the ultimate consumer. The defense that there was no direct sale is invalid, as the duty of care extends through the entire supply chain.
We now examine a rule of evidence, res ipsa loquitur, which translates to the thing speaks for itself. This doctrine applies when direct proof of negligence is absent, but the circumstances of the injury suggest negligence. The classic case is Byrne v. Bottle, citation 1863. The facts were that a barrel of flour fell from a defendant's warehouse, injuring the plaintiff. While the plaintiff could not prove the specific negligent act, the court ruled that such an event presumes negligence. The burden of proof then shifted to the defendant, who had exclusive control, to demonstrate they were not careless. We will now proceed to Section 4. This section addresses the concept of contributory negligence, a defense raised when the plaintiff's own conduct has contributed to the harm they suffered. Let us contrast standard negligence with contributory negligence. In a standard negligence claim, the defendant is considered 100% at fault. With contributory negligence, responsibility is shared, as the plaintiff's own lack of care contributed to their injury. This serves as a significant defense, potentially reducing or negating damages. The key case is Butterfield v. Forrester from 1809.
The facts involved a man riding his horse at an excessive speed who collided with a visible obstruction. The court ruled he could not recover damages, as he failed to exercise reasonable care for his own safety.
The last opportunity rule modifies the defense of contributory negligence. The central question is, what if the defendant had the final chance to avoid the accident despite the plaintiff's initial negligence? The rule holds that the party with the last clear opportunity to prevent the harm is liable. The key case is Davies v. Mann from 1882. The plaintiff negligently left his donkey tethered on the road. The defendant, driving a wagon, could have avoided the animal but failed to do so. The court held the driver liable as he possessed the final opportunity to prevent the collision.
In Section 5, we transition from common law principles to statutory law. We will now discuss the modern legislative framework of no-fault liability, particularly as it applies to motor vehicle accidents.
The Motor Vehicles Act of 1988, specifically Sections 140 to 144, introduced the system of no-fault liability. Its purpose is to provide swift relief to accident victims. The rule under Section 140 mandates that the vehicle owner must pay a fixed compensation regardless of fault. The occurrence of the accident is the sole trigger for this liability. The goal is to ensure victims receive immediate financial assistance without the delay of proving negligence in court.
As per Section 140 of the Motor Vehicles Act, 1988, for a death resulting from a motor vehicle accident, the fixed no-fault compensation is 50,000 rupees.
As per Section 140 of the Motor Vehicles Act, 1988, in the case of a permanent disablement, that fixed amount is 25,000 rupees.
We have reached our final section, Section 6. This section will serve as a revision and conclusion, consolidating the key principles discussed for the purpose of academic review and examination preparation.
For the purpose of revision, recall the following key takeaways. Negligence is the breach of a duty that causes damage. A successful claim requires proof of all three essentials: duty, breach, and damage. The neighbor rule from Donoghue v. Stevenson is fundamental to defining duty. The doctrine of res ipsa loquitur from Byrne v. Bodle is a crucial tool for proving breach. Remember the key defense of contributory negligence. Finally, understand the modern approach of no-fault liability under the Motor Vehicles Act.
In conclusion, the law of negligence represents a constant balancing act between individual and commercial freedom and the need for public safety. It is an evolving area of law, adapting from fault-based to no-fault systems to meet societal needs. The ultimate goal is consistently aligned with the maxim solus populi est suprema lex, the welfare of the people is the supreme law. It exists to ensure that where harm is caused by carelessness, a path to justice is available.